So this paper's contribution is basically looking at how we can figure out the allocation within households of the resources of the household. So it's kind of difficult. We can see what a household buys, but it's very hard to know how to divide that up among people. There are goods that are shared, for example. There are goods that we just don't see who's using them. So the main goal here was to try to identify how much of the total household's resources each household member was getting, and how that depends on things like the income or the power of the mother versus the father. And we were particularly interested in identifying what children were getting. Well, some of the things we found included that the share that fathers were getting didn't depend a whole lot on how many children there were. So as long as they had children, the father would consume about 40%, and it was true whether there were 2 kids or 3 or 4. So that was a little bit surprising, maybe. We found that boys tended to get more resources than girls, which is perhaps not too surprising. It's not clear if that's discrimination, though, because boys on average will tend to be a little bit larger. Most of what these very poor households are spending the money on is food. So we don't know if that's actually discrimination or not. And of course, if mothers were richer, they tended to get larger shares. I think in general, one thing is that if you try to figure out the rates of childhood poverty just based on household level income, you'll tend to underestimate the rate at which children are actually poor. So Malawi is a very interesting country in that it's a very poor country. Average income is only about $1 per person per day. So it really matters how much of the household's small resources are going to each member. But also, unlike many other poor countries, it's not war-torn. So it's a peaceful place. It's possible to collect good data there. So I was interested in this because I had spent a long time looking at how to measure how well off households are in general, relating their consumption to their welfare. And separately, I had this interest in what's known as identification in econometrics. So this is the problem of going between what you can observe and what you actually want to know. And this problem combined both of those two things. So it was natural for me to look at. So one interesting thing about this study is that we are really working around severe data limitations. So the natural thing to do if you're going to say how well off are children is to directly measure children. And a lot of work in development tries to directly measure, what is their height, what is their weight, how well fed are they. And we're going at this in a very indirect way. We're just seeing the total patterns of consumption of the household. And we're trying to back out from that information, seeing how that varies across households, how that varies across households with different numbers of children or different income levels. And we're trying to use statistics to back out what these impacts on children are, which is very useful in many situations where you can't directly measure the impacts on children. So we're continuing to look at Malawi. One thing we're looking at is the impact of microcredit. So it's kind of well recognized that if you give mothers access to credit, that they will be better off. The presumption is they'll be empowered. The presumption is that children will be better off too, but we don't know the exact extent to which that's true. So we'd like to see how much do children benefit.